أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد أشرف المرسلين وعلى صحبه أجمعين ومن اتبع لسنته إلى يوم الدين أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته يا أيها الإخوة والأخوات. Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. I greet you with the greeting of Islam, which is to say, may the peace and blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be upon you. After that greeting, inshallah, I invite you to invoke peace and blessings upon his messenger Muhammad ibn Abdullah, the last of the messengers and the seal of the prophets, and upon his family and upon his companions and upon all those who follow them in guidance and until the day of judgment. Amma ba'd, now as to what proceeds, inshallah, we continue with our lessons of Akhdari, the abridgement of Imam al-Akhdari, morals, purification, and prayer. We're in this section on purification, specifically the section on ghusl. In the last lesson, he had told us what the asbab are that necessitate ghusl. What are the things that necessitate a person to do ghusl? And roughly speaking, they were al-janaba, which is major ritual impurity, al-haid, which is menstruation, and al-nifas, which is postpartum bleeding. And he has said that the janaba is from two angles. The first is the emission of ejaculatory fluid, whether it be male or female, from things that normally cause pleasure, whether it be sexual intercourse, whether it be wet dream or other than that. And the second one, he said, is the disappearance of the male private part into another private part. He says that necessitates ghusl irrespective of whether a person reaches climax or not. And it necessitates ghusl for both parties. And he had told us that anyone that has a sexual dream but doesn't ejaculate as a result of that dream, then there's no ghusl that he has to perform. And anyone that doesn't have a sexual dream but goes to sleep and wakes up with sperm or, female discharge on him or her, then that person has to perform ghusl. So it's just always the discharge that emerges out of a normally occurring pleasure that's the cause of a person being in a state of janaba. So inshallah today he's going to tell us about the elements of ghusl itself, the act of ghusl. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فصل. He says this is the section في فرائض الغسل, in the obligations of ghusl. And we said ghusl just means washing, but when it comes to the sharia, what Islam is talking about is not simply taking a bath, but rather it's taking a bath that has an intention and that has specific elements. Without those specific elements, then a person's ghusl is not valid, and that he would be unable to perform the actions that he was prevented from performing as a result of being in a state of janaba, or being in a state of menstruation and having finished, or being in a state of nifas, postpartum bleeding, and having finished. He says, fara'id al-ghusl, the obligations of ghusl, he says, are four. He says, first, an-niyatu in the shuru' is to have the intention at the outset of the ghusl. We've said multiple times in respects to the niyyah, the intention, it's not something that has to be stated. It's not something that has to be verbalized, but it's just the intention, it's the qasd, that you have the intent in the direction to go and perform that action at that particular moment. You understand? So in the shuru, at the outset of your ghusl, not in the middle, not at the end, not 30 minutes before, but when you're about to perform your ghusl, just have the intention, I'm about to perform ghusl. The second one is al-fawr. Al-fawr meaning that the ghusl has to be completed in one sequence. So you don't wait for 30 minutes to pass and then you go wash the lower half of your body, and you wait another 30 minutes to pass and you go wash the top half of your body. Rather, it has to be in one sequence. He says, what dalku, he says also whenever you are performing ghusl, whatever part of the body that you wash, it has to be accompanied by rubbing. It has to be accompanied by rubbing at dalku. You have to make sure that you rub it and make sure that the water touches the skin and that your hand touches your skin while the water is touching your skin. So basically, put your hand to your skin effectively at whatever you touch. Ghusl is not simply just pouring water on yourself. You can do it by pouring water on yourself, either from a shower head or from a cup or from a bucket or whatever means that would cause the water to reach your body. But then subsequent to that, you would have to also rub that body part. So that's what's known as a dalk. He says the fourth is al-umum. Al-umum is that you have to cover every part of your body with water. Every part that's external of your body, whatever is outwardly apparent of your body. He's not talking about the canals. So your back passage or your ear canal or the private parts of a person inside of it. Whatever is a hole in a human being, you don't have to wash that. But whatever is externally apparent upon the human being, externally apparent on the human being, then that has to be washed. So that's known as al-umum. From the bottom of the feet to the top of the head, from each finger to each finger, all limbs, everything. Everything has to be washed and everything has to be rubbed. He says, وَسُنَنُهُ, and the sunnahs of ghusl, these are the sunnah actions of ghusl. They're things that they are things that the Prophet ﷺ would not leave behind whenever he would perform ghusl. But even though if they were to be omitted, the ghusl would still be valid. He says, غَسْلُ الْيَدَيْنِ إِلَى الْكَوْعَيْنِ كَالْوُضُوءِ. He says, is to wash the two hands up to the wrists as though you were making wudu. وَالْمَدْمَدَةِ is also to rinse your mouth as though you were making wudu. It's effectively making wudu. Is a recommended, is a sunnah of ghusl. وَالْمَدْمَدَةِ, and then to rinse your mouth. وَالْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ, to bring water up to your nose. وَالْإِسْتِنْثَارِ, and to blow water out of your nose. وَالْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ, to snuff water into your nose. وَالْإِسْتِنْثَارِ, to blow water out of your nose. That's another sunnah of ghusl. وَغَسْلُ سِمَاحِ الْأُذْنِ, وَغَسْلُ سِمَاحِ الْأُذْنِ, and to wash what's known as the simah, inside of your ear. وَهِيَ الثُّقْبَةُ الدَّاخِلَةُ فِي الرَّأْسِ, and he said it's the opening that goes from the head inside to that goes into it's the opening of the ear inside of the head. Basically that bone that's inside of your ear, but not the inside of your ear canal itself, which is called the outer ear canal. That little bone that's there is you wash it. But when you wash your ear, keep in mind, washing your ear is not by pouring water into it, because that would cause water to go into your ear canal and you would suffer an injury. Washing here means to rub with water. It's to effectively have your hands wet and you make sure that water reaches it. So the water could reach it by the fact of you pouring water over your head, so that would cause water to go down to it, and then you would just follow it up by rubbing. You don't take water and pour it down your ear. If you do that, you're gonna suffer a big problem. You understand? So that's another recommended act. So that's not wajib. That inside part, it's not wajib. He says, وَأَمَّا سَحْفَةُ الْأُذْنِ فَيَجِبُ غَسْلُ ظَاهِرِهَا وَبَاطِنِهَا. Now, as far as the earlobe itself, the earlobe, the external part of the ears, like that which is not inside of your earlobe, your ear canal itself. You understand? When I say ear canal, I don't mean the hole deep inside of your hole. I mean the path that leads to the ear on the internal part of the ear. That part of it, you should rub it with water. Make sure the water touches. He says, وَأَمَّا سَحْفَةُ الْأُذْنِ. Now, as far as the earlobe itself, what's attached to your head, فَيَجِبُ, then that's actually wajib. That's actually obligatory for you to wash ظَاهِرِهَا, the outside part of it, and وَبَاطِنِهَا, in the inside part of it. Because that goes under umum, that goes under covering your body, because that's something that's on the external aspect of your body. Understand? Mm-hmm. Now, وَفَضَائِلُهُ, he says that the recommended acts of wudu. He says, الْبِدَايَةُ بِغَسْلِ النَّجَاسَةِ. He says is to begin by cleaning yourself of whatever the filth might be. So whether it's menstrual blood, whether it's semen, whether it's female discharge, whatever that particular element is, before you begin your ghusl, is to wash that off of you completely, off of yourself. ثُمَّ الذَّكَرِ, and to wash your private parts as well. فَيَنْوِ إِنَّهُ, and then you can make your intention at that particular point in time. You can make your intention at that particular point in time. You understand? But likewise, you can make your intention and then wash it, or you can make your intention and do the wudu part and then do the ghusl and then wash the filth afterwards. It's all the same. But what's better is that you wash the filth before, first and foremost, so that when you go over the limbs, you're going over it with pure water, and the filth is already cleaned off of your body. You understand? ثُمَّ أَعْدَاءِ الْوُضُوءِ, and then it's recommended that as soon as you finish that, is that you perform the limbs that are in wudu. So you wash your wrists up until the hand, you wash your mouth, the nose, the face, the arms, and then you get to the head. مرة. Each of them one time. So unlike wudu where you wash them 3 times, it's recommended when you do ghusl to just wash them 1 time. ثم على جسده, and then you wash the top half of your body. You understand? You wash the top half of your body from your head down to your waist. وتثليث غسل الرأس, and when you're washing your head, you pour water over it 3 times. That's also another recommended act. You understand? وتقديم شق جسده الأيمن, and to also begin with the right side of your body when you're doing ghusl. You understand? So when you're doing ghusl, you begin with the top right side of your body. Then you go to the top left side of your body. Then you go to the bottom right side of your body. Then you go to the bottom left side of your body. So that's the recommended order of ghusl, but it's not wajib. It's not something that is, if you do it the opposite way, your ghusl is still valid. You understand? He says, وَتَقْلِيلُ الْمَاءِ عَلَى الْأَعْدَاءِ. He says it's also recommended that whoever does ghusl, that he minimizes the amount of water that he uses. You understand? The Prophet ﷺ, he says to avoid extremism and wudu and ghusl. You understand? So, and wudu and dua, I should say. So whenever you're purifying yourself, don't waste water. So don't be in the shower for 40 minutes just sitting there and wasting water for no reason. That's wasteful and it's harmful to the earth. وَمَنْ نَسِيَ لُمْعَةً أَوْ عُدْوًا مِنْ غُسْلِهِ. He says that, but whoever forgets a particular spot on his body or a limb on his body, min ghuslihi, from his ghusl, بادر إلى غسله حين تذكره, then he goes and rectifies that particular part of his ghusl as soon as he remembers. ولو بعد الشهر, even if it's after a month. Understand? He says, وَعَادَ مَا صَلَّ قَبْلَهُ, and then he repeats everything he prayed since that time. So a person should be careful with respect to his ghusl to make sure that everything is perfect. وَإِنْ أَخَرَهُ بَعْدَ ذِكْرِهِ, but if he purposely delays rectifying his ghusl after he's left the ghusl, and then he remembers that, oh, I missed a particular limb or I missed a particular part, he purposely says, I'll do it tomorrow, بَطَلَ غَسْلُهُ, then his ghusl is batil, it's invalid, and he has to do a whole new ghusl. فَإِنْ كَانَ فِي أَعْدَاءِ الْوُضُوءِ, and if it happens to be one of the limbs of wudu, because when you're doing ghusl, there's some limbs that you wash that you would wash during wudu. وَصَادَفَ غَسْلُ الْوُضُوءِ, and then he happens to do wudu, أَجْزَأَهُ, then that suffices him, inshallah. So for example, he does ghusl, and then, you know, he leaves a part of his body, he forgets to wash his arm, for example, right? And then he does wudu later on, thinking that his ghusl is valid, and then he remembers, oh, you know, when I was doing ghusl, I missed a part of my arm, but after that I had performed wudu and I had washed my arm during that wudu. So then that wudu would suffice the ghusl. He would be okay in that case. You understand? Now he says, so we'll just add this short little section to it as well, because the one after that is in tayammum, so we might as well finish it. He says, Faslun, he says this is section, La yahilu lil junubi, it's not permissible for the person that's in a state of janaba, or menstruating and has postpartum bleeding, dukhul al masjid. It's not permissible for that person to enter the masjid. Wala qira'at al Quran, it's not permissible for that person to recite the Quran, illa al ayah, except for an ayah wa nahwaha, or a few ayahs, لِتَعَوِّذِ, for the purpose of protecting himself, وَنَحْوِهِ, or the likes of that. So for example, if he needs to recite Ayat al-Kursi before going to sleep, right? So he can perform, or the mu'awwadatain, or to recite Qul A'udhu bil Falaq, Qul A'udhu bin Nas before he goes to sleep, but he's in a state of janaba, then it's permissible for him to recite those, inshallah. But to sit there and open a mushaf and recite, no. Or to recite the mushaf from memory while you're in a state of janaba, no. Sayyidina Ali, he informs the Prophet ﷺ used to recite the Quran, and he used to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every state except for when he was in the bathroom or when he was in a state of janaba. Now, وَلَا يَجُوزُ لِمَنْ لَا يَقْدِرُ عَلَى الْمَاءِ, it's not permissible, and this lack of permissibility, it's more of a dislike as opposed to it being haram. لا يجوز لمن لا يقدر, it's not permissible, meaning it's not recommended for the one لا يقدر على الماء البارد, that doesn't have the capacity to withstand cold water, أن يأتي زوجته, that he has intercourse with with his uh, uh, with his uh, with his wife, with his spouse, حتى يعد الآلة, until he prepares some type of tool to heat the water, إلا أن يحتلم, except that if he just happens to have a wet dream, فلا شيء عليه, in that case there's nothing against him. He's saying that if you don't have the capacity to stand cold water, and then you would have to go and do tayammum because of your incapacity to stand cold water, he's saying that it's not permissible for you to perform wudu, meaning it's disliked. You can't say it's haram because of the fact that a person has the legal right to have intercourse with their spouse. That's something Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made obligatory upon them. That has made permissible upon them. And therefore, even the fact that he would have to do tayammum after is not enough of a reason to prevent him from doing that. But the situation is that it would be preventable. It would be preventable by him simply avoiding approaching his wife if he knows that he can't, withstand cold water. But then the issue with that is that because it could go on forever, he could be in a place where it's cold, like 4 months at a time, 5 months at a time. Then it would be problematic to make it haram. But it would also be problematic to not mention it, because a person could theoretically go 5 months and he's in a state of janaba, and all he's doing is making tayammum. You see this, and there's places in the earth, like in Russia, where it gets like negative 70 degrees in the wintertime, and they're kind of rural. So the way they have to prepare their water is they have to go and have a heated log cabin, get the water out of a pump that's specially made to withstand the cold, heat the water, and then do it. So that might take a process of 1 hour, 2 hours, right? So if the person is not someone that can withstand the cold water, and in that case it's impossible to withstand it, then it's not advisable for him to have intercourse with his wife. And the same thing goes for the woman as well. So inshallah, that's the section on ghusl. We'll recap again. He says the obligations of ghusl, fara'id al-ghusl, the obligations of ghusl, an-niyatu in the shuru' is to have the intention at the outset of ghusl. Wal-fawru is to have continuity, meaning to do it in one sequence. Wal-dalku is to rub every body part that you're washing. Wal-umum is to cover the entire body with water and to rub the entire body. And remember, he had said that when you're doing wudu, it's enough for you when you have thick hair, like a thick beard, that you just rub the outside. But when you're doing ghusl, you have to ensure that the inside of your beard, the skin underneath it, gets touched as well. And the same thing with your toes. When you're making wudu, it's enough for the water to reach your toes. But when you're doing ghusl, you have to ensure that you rub in between the toes as well. He says, وَسُنَنُهُ, in the sunnahs of ghusl, he says, غَسْلُ الْيَدَيْنِ إِلَى الْكَوْعَيْنِ كَالْوُضُوء is to wash the hands up until the wrist, like when you're doing wudu. وَالْمَدْمَدَةِ is to rinse your mouth. وَالْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ is to snuff water into your nose, وَالْإِسْتِنْثَارِ, and then bring it out, meaning snuff it out, or blow it out. وَغَسْلُ سِمَاخِ الْأُذُنِ, and also to wash the simach of your ear. وَهِيَ الثُّقْبَةُ, he says, and that is وَهِيَ الثُّقْبَةُ الدَّاخِلَةُ, he says that is the outer ear canal, meaning the little bone that's inside of your ear that leads down to your ear canal, في الرأس, inside of the head. وأما صحفة الأذن, now as far as the earlobe itself, فيجب غسل ظاهرها وباطنها, then it's obligatory for you to wash both its outside and its inside. And in the case of the ear, washing here means ensuring the water touches it and you rub it, not that you pour water down your ear hole. وفضائله, he says the recommended acts of wudu is al-bidayatu bi ghasl najasa, is to begin by washing off the filth that's on your body. ثم الذكر, then washing the private parts. فينوي عنده, and then you intend your ghusl at that particular point. ثم أعداء الوضوء, and then to ensure that you ثم أعداء الوضوء, and then to wash the limbs of the wudu after that, after you make that intention of ghusl. مرة, each of them one by one time. ثم على جسده, and then you wash the top half of your body. وتثليث غسل الرأس, and it's also recommended that you wash your head. You pour water on your head 3 times when you're washing it. وتقديم الشق جسده الأيمن, and it's also recommended that a person begins with the right side of their body whenever they're washing something in their ghusl. وتقليل الماء على الأعداء, And it's also recommended that a person minimizes the amount of water that he uses to wash his limbs when he's doing ghusl. He says, وَمَنْ نَسِيَ لُمْعَةً أو عُدْوًا, whoever forgets a particular piece of his body, أو عُدْوًا, or entire limb, من غسله, from his ghusl, he says, بادر إلى غسله حين تذكره. He says he goes and rectifies his wudu, his ghusl, as soon as he remembers it. وَلَوْ بَعْدَ الشَّهْرٍ, even if it happens to be after a month. He says, وَعَادَ مَا صَلَّ قَبْلَهُ, and he repeats whatever he prayed in between he's taking a ghusl and him rectifying his ghusl. Says he found a mistake in his ghusl. وَإِنْ أَخَرَهُ بَعْدَ ذِكْرِهِ بَطْلَ غَسْلُهُ, but if he delays it after remembering the fact that he left out a part of his body or a whole limb, and he remembers, he says, I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it in an hour or something like that, then his ghusl is invalid, and he has to repeat his ghusl. فَإِنْ كَانَ فِي أَعْدَاءِ الْوُضُوءِ, if the limb that he's rectifying, that he forgot, happens to be from amongst the limbs that you wash in wudu, وَصَادَفَهُ غَسْلُ الْوُضُوء, and then after the fact that he forgot the wudu had covered it, he had performed wudu and that had covered that limb, أجزاءه, then that's enough to suffice him. He doesn't have to go and redo that limb by taking a shower, because he washed it while he's doing wudu, right? He says, لا يحل للجنوب, he says it's not permissible for a person that's in a state of janaba, دخول المسجد, to enter the masjid. ولا قراءة القرآن, it's not permissible for him to recite the Quran, إلا الآية, except for an ayah, ونحوها, or a few ayahs, للتعوذ, for protection, ونحوه, and something similar to that. For example, a person asks him, I'm reciting this particular juz, I just want to make sure that I don't have any mistakes. And he recites I'm reciting this page. He recites the page to him, and he says to him, oh, you made a mistake in this ayah. You were supposed to say this. You were supposed to say قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, but you said something else. You understand? So he can say that, and then he can do things like that. So a few ayahs, but to recite the Quran from the Mus'haf or from memory while you're in a state of janaba is not permissible. وَلَا يَجُوزُ لِمَنْ, is not permissible for the person, and also keep in mind, when the woman is menstruating or in postpartum, she happens to be a talibah, she happens to be a student of knowledge, that she can also read her juz, she can also read the Quran, because of the fact that if she was to leave it for a long time, she would forget her lessons, she would forget what she's learning. So that person also has a darura, has an excuse that necessitates that she can read the Quran even if she's in a state of janaba. وَلَا يَجُوزُ لِمَنْ, and it's not permissible, even though we wouldn't call it a state of janaba, but we call it a state of janaba likewise. وَلَا يَجُوزُ لِمَنْ, it's not permissible for the one لا يقدر على الماء, it's not recommended for the one that has no capacity to withstand الماء البارد, the cold water, أن يأتي زوجته, that he sexually approaches his wife, meaning that he has intercourse with his wife, حتى يعد الآلة, until he prepares the necessary means to heat water. So if he's in the desert, he has gas that can heat up his water. If we're in the West, we have water that's already there, that's hot inside of the shower head. إلا أن يحتلم, except that he happens to just have a wet dream, and then even though he can't withstand the cold water, it's not his fault because he just had a wet dream, right? فلا شيء عليه, in that case, there's nothing on him. جزاكم الله خير يا إخوان. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept this from us. السلام عليكم.